What's up, Steelers fans? Checking in at halftime on this wild card playoff game. The Steelers are sitting at 7-6 right now, 1 point under the visiting Houston Texans. Only one other team in the NFL plays with 6 offensive linemen more than the Steelers, and that's the Houston Texans. They're also quite a conservative team. D'Amico Ryans not afraid to punt it away. They have a vaunted defense that talked a lot about defense, and Ryans is not afraid to make those guys prove it. They like to live by their strengths, similar to how Tomlin is not afraid to let the Steelers defense try and win games for him. He's hanging a lot on them at this point so far in this game. They've hung up for the most part. Outside of that 92-yard drive, the Steelers defense is blanked this very good Texans team. So jumping into it from the beginning of this thing, I just wanted to give a shout out to my sis who sang the national anthem at the beginning of this game. It felt like she was going a little bit low, kind of hugging the bottom of her register. With the climate, everything going on right now, I thought she might have been going for a more somber tone, or maybe she had just had a cold and didn't feel the confidence to go high. But then I guess she was just saving it all for the fireworks, because when the Rockets' red glare hit, she hit those high notes, and all you could say is "fucking America, man." In theory, I don't like that song because it's a war anthem talking about bombs and, armaments of war. Can we have something more positive that we can rally around? But certain renditions, I should call her out by name. I'll put it over the video here, but I really loved that performance. I never talk about the national anthem, but that one really got me. But enough about the foo-foo artistic stuff, talking about football. The Texans won the toss and deferred to the second half, so they'll get the ball coming out here after the second half kickoff. The Steelers came up empty on their first drive out, despite starting with a 10-yard run from Warren and then a nice catch and run from Metcalf. Going from the line of scrimmage, catching that thing underneath and taking it for about 15 yards. So those 2 early first downs are wasted after Houston clamped down on the running attack there with Jaylen Warren. Rodgers' throw on 3rd and 7 was well over Kenneth Gainwell's head. Rodgers characteristically screaming after the play. Not sure who was at fault for that one, other than Rodgers for just making a bad throw and missing the guy. So curious how Rodgers thought that was anyone's fault but his own. For the Texans part of it, when they got the ball, their right tackle false started twice on that first drive. The first time he was not called for it, and it ended up being a big 3rd down conversion to Christian Kirk, I believe. Similar to the big plays that we saw last week from the passing game, crossing the middle of the field. I think it was a corner route. Gave about 20 yards there, but the right tackle left early, not called for it. He was called on it the next time he did it, and it set the Texans back. And then TJ was able to bring the heat on that 3rd down play to force an incompletion that brought about the first Texans punt. So a trade of punts occupied the first half of the first quarter. The Steelers offense coming back on the field, they found Metcalf on a rollout on the first play out. Rodgers rolling to his left, Metcalf coming all the way across the field, getting wide open. I believe this is a play we've seen a lot from the Steelers before. It's a staple play for them. Good to see it continuing to work for them. And it's also just good to see guys getting wide open and not having to work so hard for offensive successes. It was good to see Metcalf getting into a groove, coming back from his 2-game suspension. The first drive was a Jaylen Warren experience. The second drive was the Kenneth Gainwell project. Nice division of labor from those 2 guys there. They also did a very clear division of labor with the outside linebackers, with both Jack Sawyer and Nick Herbig being true substitutions for those first 2 guys, Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt, as opposed to what we've seen success from the Steelers last week with the 3 outside linebacker packages. They decided not to roll with that this week and just use those guys to spell TJ and Alex at various points. For the Texans, physicality for them can be a bit of a weakness as far as their defense is concerned. Once you get them down into the deep red zone, it's hard to keep them. Once you get your push going, it should be hard to keep you from scoring. Although the Steelers weren't able to exploit that weakness in the first half, they were able to get down into the deep red zone. The first time out for the Steelers offense, they ended up just taking the easy 3. The second time, they ended up risking it and trying to go for more. They were able to get the conversion with a play-action pass to Adam Thielen. But then it seemed kind of silly because they were forced to kick the field goal just 3 plays later. So you end up taking the 3 anyway. I guess they did run more time off the clock and made it more difficult for the Texans to answer after that. So if anything, that's a plus there. But again, I've said it before, I'll say it a million times. You never have to apologize for taking the automatic points when they're right there in front of you. And with Chris Boswell, they're about as automatic as they come. By the way, some recent struggles notwithstanding for the kicking unit for the Steelers recently. And I say the kick unit because it's not Boswell who's been struggling. Far be it from me, nobody to call out anyone specifically, but it's been the long snapper who mostly has been responsible. And I don't like talking on Christian Kuntz because I do like his physicality. A couple years ago in the game against Green Bay, there was a play on the sideline right at the end of that game. Chris Boswell started to get up into a Packers face because they were over on the Steelers sideline. There was a bit of a scrum at the end of this game. You guys probably remember this. Chris Boswell got up into one lineman's face, and all of a sudden, three guys with numbers in their 90s appeared in front of him. He's just staring there, looking at guys much towering over him. And Christian Kuntz pulls him away and gets in front of him and is like, listen, guys, does his best to sizzle out that situation. So I like Kuntz as a guy. I like his physicality, his toughness, but got to get more consistent on the snaps, man. That's your one job. You got to do it well. We all ran Mason Cole out of town, even though he was pretty handy especially in the move on the run game. If you can't get that snap down, man, what good are you as a snapper? But speaking of snaps, the Texans tried a little bit of tricky snappery and tried to run a flea flicker in this half. That was the Jack Sawyer tipped pass that was recovered by Yahweh Black, or maybe it was a interception by Black. Either way, it was either a forced fumble and recovered by Black or it was an interception by Black. That was the first Steelers takeaway. The Steelers had two of them in this first half. Weren't able to capitalize on either. The second was, again, C.J. Stroud put the ball on the ground, I think 3 times in this first half, at least. The first and third ended up costing him. The second time, it was Keanu Benton on the forced fumble and then T.J. Watt on the recovery. Despite his lack of sacks recently, he's been plaguing the quarterback with pressures, creating havoc. So whether or not it's showing up on the stat sheets that you guys are looking at, T.J. Watt's been getting after it like hell this last couple weeks. Obviously, he had the interception last week. He had the fumble recovery this week. Mostly just fortuitous plays, being in the right place at the right time. But TJ is a guy who is hard to deny. Houston almost went off on a scoring run at the end of the first half there to set up a potential, front end, back end, in and out of the halftime, a double dipping situation. But they were unsuccessful thanks to Cam Hayward on the front end, had a great pressure on a certain play, and then broken up on the back end by Chuck Clark. He should get a shout out on that play because he ended up hurting himself. Hope he's able to return. But giving up your body for the play, you love to see that from a guy, especially in the playoffs. It's a warrior. You talk about the standard as standard. That's standard right there. Leave nothing on the field. Landon Roberts did it 2 years ago, going into maybe last year, whatever the year was that Mason Rudolph played a playoff game against the Bills. Landon Roberts with his arm half hanging off, with one of his in a sling, with a mostly ripped pectoral muscle, had a great pass breakup in the end zone, much deeper than he should have been playing pass coverage, by the way. So shout out to him for that. Following that play, you had a second down. Peyton Wilson had a fantastic play, putting his helmet right on the ball, dislodging what would have been a catch on a check down into an incompletion. That guy's had a bit of I don't want to say down year, hasn't taken the leap we expected from him after a monster rookie campaign last year, but still proving he's one of the most dynamic linebackers in the game. And then coming down to it with 18 seconds left, the Texans had a 3rd down and 10. And pressure just smothered C.J. Stroud. Kyle Duggar had the hit as he threw, forced a bad incompletion. They ended up just punting it away as time expired to run out the clock there. But perfect timing. We're starting the second half here. Lisa Salters having a word with Mike Tomlin. Let's listen in.
Certainly taking the ball away. I'd like to see us have more success on 3rd down, but certainly the same thing can be said for our offense as well. I don't think we wanted enough 3rd downs on either side of the ball to engineer victory slowly. We got to be better at attack.
Well, Troy Aikman just declared that we're watching Aaron Rodgers' last game as a football player here. With under 4 minutes to go, the Steelers are trailing 17-6. The Texans just got a 1st down inside the Steelers' 10 off of a Nick Herbig face mask penalty. No false start on the offense. Is that the right tackle who's been false starting all night? Too little, too late, refs. Man, this one was hard to watch, especially for me who allowed myself to believe that the Steelers might be able to do something this year. When I saw that Aaron Rodgers was the most experienced, had the most postseason experience of any of the quarterbacks still alive in this postseason, on the AFC side at least, I thought that may have meant something. I thought that experience might have translated to something, but this offense has been entirely flat all night here. If not for four takeaways, slipped through for a touchdown. That's the game. Just an embarrassing performance against the run tonight. How did the playoff game end last year with the Ravens? Just ran off the field with Derrick Henry, like 250 yards. Nick Chubb, who is a shadow of his former self, and this Marks fellow, 11 plays, 87-yard drive on the touchdown, covering almost 6 minutes for the Texans to ice this game for the Steelers, an 18-point deficit following the extra point. What a different tone what a different tone this video is from the last time I talked to you, when I was screaming, cursing, and well, looks like this is going to be it for the Steelers season. Another one and done in the playoffs. But, you know, is it even worth talking about the second half at this point? The last time I talked to you, we had so much hope for how this thing might turn out, and everything has gone downhill since then. I think the fumble 6, the scoop and score, was very reminiscent of the Bills game. I thought after that point, this thing was just over. I don't want to say I sense quit from the players, but I definitely felt like they lost belief in themselves at that point. They just felt like this was history repeating themselves, both going back to the Bills game from this year and then also reminiscent of the playoff game last year against the Ravens, where they just ran the freaking axles off of us with Derrick Henry. Well, I'll talk about it anyway, and if you don't want to listen, you don't have to. The Texans started the second half with 2 straight first downs. The Steelers made an emphasis on the run-stopping game. Another pass batted down at the line. Goodness gracious. Rodgers must be scratching his head at this point. He's been so adamant. Every single time a ball hit the ground, it was everyone's fault but Aaron Rodgers's. I was optimistic that he might end up coming back if the Steelers won this game, or ended up making it close at least. But the way he's going out in this thing so pathetically, and Gainwell with the drop on a check down. Only the sickos are still watching at this point. Everyone with a life, everyone with anything else going on in their world other than the Steelers right now has turned this game off. TJ Watt just watching on the bench, dejected. An all-pro season from Cam Hayward, wasted. So many people gave him shit for so much of this year for whining and forcing that contract extension that he more than lived up to. The only all-pro on the Steelers team. And for it to end like this just breaks my... I hope this is not the end for Cam Hayward. For Aaron Rodgers, I care less about what ends up happening. Cam Hayward hanging his head on the Steelers bench right now. Feel so much for him. Mike Tomlin. Pundits have made doubt of what his future might hold. I think he still lives and breathes football, specifically coaching football, just, being around. Rodgers throws an interception. He's probably going to take this back for a score. What is that, 30-6? The Steelers are going to end up blown out in this thing. It was much closer than the final score is going to end up making it look like. But after that scoop and score touchdown, the Steelers became so one-dimensional, and it was hard to imagine them being able to come back in this game when the Texans' strength is that pass rush, being able to create havoc. And then on the back end, they have 2 top-flight pass coverers, and then on the front end, 2 top-flight pass rushers. And when you need to just drop back and throw to shoot yourself out of a blowout situation, they can just pin their ears back and come after you. And it's a foregone conclusion. The writing was on the wall. Rodgers has a beanie on right now. I don't think he's going to be coming back on the field. It's probably going to be the Mason Rudolph show. But we may as well finish this one strong, because why not? It's the last one for the year. Speaking of Hayward's career being wasted, a fantastic, stellar defensive performance was wasted. 4 turnovers for the Steelers defense. They kept this thing close for as long as they can, even being on the field as long as they were. I mean, at the time they got their 3rd turnover, I believe the time of possession battle was 21-13 in the Houston's favor. So the only thing keeping the Steelers in the game was those takeaways. The Texans were racking up yards, and thanks to those takeaways, the Steelers were able to keep the Texans from putting the only stats on the board that actually matter, being points. Obviously, they weren't able to hold their grip forever, getting 0 support whatsoever. I don't know if that extra point was blocked or you just missed it, but a little bit of idiosyncrasy following the events of last week with the missed extra point and the missed field goal that altered the course of that game. Actually, I think there were 2 field goals this past weekend that altered courses of NFL playoff games. Let's see. Snap good, hold good. Just a bad kick. Ramsey might have gotten a piece of it, but that thing was coming out of there like a knuckleball either way. Anyway, Hayward went down at one point in this game, early in the second half, but fortunately he only missed 1 play. The Texans were already in field goal territory at that point, but they had a 3rd down inside the 20, and Stroud misplaced a pass. He just got tunnel vision on that play. Echols was able to undercut the ball from the backside, turn it the other way with the Steelers' 3rd takeaway of the day. If only that had continued for the rest of the game. Again, and as I predicted, Rodgers on the sideline with a beanie, Steelers offense coming back onto the field under the tutelage of Mason Rudolph. Watching the Steelers season come to an end as Mason Rudolph hands off to Jalen Watt for another stifled play. The Steelers' rushing attack that was so promising early in this game, starting off with a 10-yard rush on the very first play of this game, turned out so completely backwards. Every single time they tried to hand it off, it was stopped for a loss. Jalen Petre, the Texans safety, was a big part of that. I think he had 3 straight tackles. After the Steelers took over at their own 4, they got 1 first down, but Jalen Petre blew up a first down bubble screen. And on the next play, he was there to deliver a blow to the head of a arguably defenseless Calvin Austin to force another incompletion. MVS was able to dig them out with a conversion over the middle on the 3rd down and long play. But that was one of the few bright spots. It's possible that this was another case of Rodgers, his hubris getting the better of him, like when he zoned in on MVS at the end of the Browns game, thinking that he could victimize Petre in that situation, and Petre just was able to rise to the moment, and Rodgers maybe is realizing that he isn't what he thought he used to be, and maybe he's thinking, do I want to come back another year and tarnish my reputation of everything that I've shown? A Super Bowl champion, a 3-time MVP. Do I want to roll myself out there as a husk of that person? Who knows what goes on inside of that mind of his. I think he's definitely not the Tom Brady type of person that's just driven to what's next. I got to do stuff. My wife's having an affair. Who cares? I got to work. Nobody's ever going to write history books about guys whose wives didn't have affairs. They write history books about guys who are so obsessed with winning rings that their wives are having affair after affair after affair. And I don't mean to pull the Shadur Sanders move of talking shit on Tom Brady for his wife's affairs. That's probably a dick move on my part. Right after that big 3rd down conversion, they followed it up with another tackle for loss. Again, Jalen Petre. If they weren't set up with great field position a couple times by turnovers, they would have been shut out tonight. It was just a pitiful performance. I don't know how much you could say Darnell Washington would have changed that if he hadn't broken his arm and had been available for this team. I think you can make an argument that not targeting Pat Freiermuth until about 10 minutes to go in the 4th quarter might have been a mistake for this team, losing one of their most dynamic weapons in Darnell Washington. You think you might want to use somebody else over the middle, Pat Freiermuth, especially when you happen to have Pat Freiermuth, a fantastic receiving tight end. I don't know why that wasn't a bigger part of the offense. Well, I think I have an idea, is that Rodgers wasn't able to set his feet and throw at all tonight because of a disruptive pass rush. Troy Fautanu, a 1st-round pick, who had been, I think we'd avoided talking about him for most of this year, as opposed to talking about how good he had been. But tonight he was embarrassed on a couple of situations. And on the other end of things, Dylan Cook, it'll be interesting to see how he ended up grading out with all the hype that he had with the Cinderella story of his career. First string guy goes down, Broderick Jones. No Spencer or Calvin Anderson, whichever one they are. I get those guys confused. No Andres Pete. All of a sudden you're down to a fourth string, undrafted free agent guy. He shined bright for you in a couple of games before they had tape on him. But once they knew that was the pain point to attack. And again, this might be unfair until we end up seeing the all-22. He might be the strong point of this line because Isaac Seumalo was embarrassed at least one point. Mason McCormick, for his efforts, he saved another Rodgers fumble that could have been disastrous when the Steelers were still in this game. His recovery on that could have kept the Steelers in this one. It didn't end up going that way, but still a great effort play for Mason McCormick. Looking deep on that third down play to Calvin Austin, there was a lot of contact between Lassiter and Austin. The rules analysts very confidently assured us that, oh, that's just their legs getting tangled up. That's not a foul. As it turned out, there was no contact between their legs. There was contact with the defender on Austin's shoulder. Now, for the defender's credit, I will say that he was able to turn his head around and look for the ball. So you do got to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was trying to make a play on that ball. I mean, if that were Joey Porter doing that, we would have made that argument for him. I still expected a flag there. You got to have a flag there. But again, Rodgers frustrated with his guys. I mean, I would love to see gone are the days of a quarterback just tapping his chest plate and being, that's on me. That one's on me. I would love to see that from a leader of my team. I mean, when you're screaming at guys, obviously, it makes their shoulders go up. It makes them tighten. There have to be more productive ways to get guys to live up to your expectations of them. Like in the moment, you have to realize that most people don't perform at their peak when they feel like they're being attacked. And their mindset is I either go out there and prove everyone wrong, or I go out there and prove everyone right. All the fans screaming at me, my father who said I never amount to anything, my coach who said I'm lazy, my teachers who said I'm dumb. I'll be proving all of those people right. So many things you don't want guys to be thinking about. All you want them to be thinking about is where are my hands? What are my hands doing? Where are my feet right now? Where's the sideline? And by the way, DK Metcalf, after that drop in the first half, he was not targeted again until the fourth quarter. In that fourth quarter, that target that he was looked at again, that would have maybe changed the course of this game. I don't know what the score was at that point. But again, another went right through his hands. And, it's hard to continue making excuses for DK. That's become a pattern, that was a pattern for him this year in this now extinct 2025 season for the Steelers. Drops were an issue for him. I don't know if that's a lapse of concentration or, he has all the strength in the world. He should be able to dominate guys and dominate catch points specifically. So you expect better from him in that aspect of his game. At the same time, the quarterback not being able to sit in the pocket because of the pressure, but also because of, not trusting his protection, having a unproven first-round pick on the right side, having an undrafted rookie free agent on the left, spending a little bit too much attention on what's going on right in front of him, a little bit less on what's going on, like who's getting open. Those things add up. It's a cascading avalanche effect. And, tonight, if I didn't say it earlier, the Steelers could have been shut out in this game offensively, if not for their defense setting them up in some advantageous situations. And that's why I don't want to hear any guff about the defense giving up 30 points because they did hold this one as close as they could for as long as they could. But it's hard to hate that much on a defense that provided 3 takeaways for you. There were 3 other plays that C.J. Stroud just put on the ground. I don't know if there was an issue with the center quarterback exchange. A lot of times C.J. wasn't ready for the snap and it just bounced off of him. Most of the time they were able to fall on those balls. I think the first and third one, the second one being a Steelers takeaway. But, there were opportunities out there. I think going into this offseason, if Terrell Austin's contract I don't see any way that Terrell Austin's contract is renewed. And I don't think you look inside, you don't promote from the inside for defensive coordinator. I think you need new ideas, new strategies, something new on the defense side of the ball. I've been saying for a couple years now that the Steelers defense is too old. They need to get younger and they need to get cheaper, and they need to draft defense, which is counterlogical to a lot of people because of how much we spend on the defense already and how little attention you would think we pay to the offensive side of the ball if you just look at the relative salary allocations. But the defense, as I said, too old, too expensive. You get cheaper and younger through the draft. What does the offense need? The offense needs leadership. You can do that through free agency. So, draft defense, sign offense would be my strategy. But the Steelers have had a pretty aggressive philosophy as far as drafting offensive linemen, trying to rebuild these trenches and create some sort of bully mentality that has been endemic to the Steelers' identity for so many years prior, that is. It's been a while since that's been part of our whole deal. The offensive side of that has taken large steps this year. According to a number of metrics, we are one of the better blocking offensive line units in the NFL. But on the other side of the trenches in the defense, we still lack in so many ways. This past season, the first round pick being Derek Harmon, that's a commitment to an issue. And then picking Black after that is reinforcing that commitment. Just like the year prior, you went Fitanu and then followed that up with a McCormick pick later in the draft. Actually, was Frazier in that same draft too? They didn't draft 3 starting offensive linemen in one draft, did they? The last thing I remember talking about was Metcalf's drop late in that game that could have changed the course of it, but it went through his hands and brought the punt team back on the field and the Boo Birds back to Acrisure Stadium. Down 2 scores with less than 10 minutes in the game in your season, the crowd didn't care for that decision to punt the ball away. But little did they know that it would have ballooned even further away from us. At that point, the Steelers defense still could have played the hero and won this thing for us. They stuffed a run on first down. They second down. They had a pick. They very nearly had a tip or interception from Highsmith elevating into the passing lane. Unfortunately, on a quick crossing route, that ended up as a conversion for a first down. So even in the weighty moments of this game, when, as Tomlin likes to say, when the road gets narrow, I thought we would see the 3 outside linebacker package out there because it worked so well last week. I don't know why this team would eschew something that works so well, would turn their back on a package that suited them just a week ago. They kept all the things that they put on film that didn't work, and they let go of all the stuff that did work. Perplexing to me. I think on that third down, we finally did get the Herbig up the middle, the three outside linebacker package, but they were able to get that again converted to Christian Kirk. Last week I mentioned that I'm so sick of seeing the Steelers give up touchdowns for 40 yards on 3rd and 4th and 2. When it's 3rd and 4th and short, you shouldn't be giving up long and touchdown plays. You shouldn't be in an all or nothing defense in that situation. You should be in a bring pressure, and if they don't get there, put my coverage over the top to make sure a big doesn't become a explosive play. The story out of last week's game was that, we were going to shut down Derrick Henry, do whatever we can to shut down the running game and force them to beat us over the top. And I think the quote from Mike Tomlin was, "We chose our hill to die on, but we just managed to survive." I think this week they chose the same hill, and the Texans, with a full week to prepare, viewing that video over and over again, was more than prepared for the Steelers, who enacted the exact same plan in this game. Obviously did not go the same way. 3rd down efficiency, 2 for 14 for the Steelers in this game, compared to 10 for 15 for the Texans against the Steelers defense. They were big in the weighty moments. The Steelers came up small. I mean, I'm sure that's what Mike Tomlin's going to end up telling us in the post game. Fans are going to have a hard time accepting that in a 20-point blowout, that it's closer than the scoreboard made it look. Going back to that Bills game, the fumble 6 to start. I got to turn this freaking TV off. It's driving me nuts. Game just went final. Good for D'Amico Ryans, former Eagle. Both Pennsylvania teams eliminated from the NFL playoffs now. At least there's some semblance of a PA guy continuing. And although Jaden Reed, Penn State graduate, returned for the Texans in this game.